At 8 months pregnant, I discovered a will in my husband's study safe. It bequeathed all his shares, properties, plus 10 private airplanes and 5 islands. All to be unconditionally gifted to Celia, the impoverished student he sponsored, upon his death. However, my husband and I had a prenuptial agreement, and there was not even a dowry at our wedding. He said indifferently, "You are an enlightened person, there's no need for such feudal remnants as a dowry." In 7 years of marriage, not even the property deeds bore my name. "Who permitted you to touch my things?" My husband's voice was icy, his brows furrowed in anger. I neither cried nor made a fuss. The password is Celia's birthday. He snatched the document from my hand, changed the password, and saved it securely. "It's just a password, can you stop making a scene?" I calmly proposed divorce. Yet he dismissed it, merely locking the door and telling me to get out. He warned me not to touch his things again. I nodded and turned to schedule an abortion. I would not touch his things anymore. Nor did I want the child in my belly. "Mrs. Evelyn, are you sure you want to schedule the procedure? Your pregnancy is too advanced now, and it may affect your health." The doctor's gentle persuasion caused me a momentary heartache. I bit my tongue hard to suppress my emotions. "I am certain, I want to schedule the surgery for 1 week from now." The confirmation text arrived quickly. Clutching my twisting abdomen, I went to the familiar law firm. Attorney Victor handed me a cup of warm water. "Mrs. Evelyn, there is no need for you to leave with nothing. According to marriage law, you can at least claim half of the marital assets." The steam filled the air, making my eyes sting. Adrian had notarized all his assets before our marriage. All post-marital income was held by agents and never passed through his hands. As early as our wedding day, he had told me that he would never divide half of his hard-earned possessions just because of a marriage certificate. I originally thought he was just dissatisfied with Harold forcing him to marry. I also understood how arduous his life had been over the years. So, obediently, I asked for nothing. I even signed documents willingly relinquishing everything. It was not until I saw the will that I realized those things he was unwilling to give me had long been planned to be legally transferred to another person. He was not unwilling to marry, it was just that the bride he anticipated was not me. I sipped the warm water, my voice irrepressibly hoarse. "No need, Attorney Victor, I do not require assets, I just want a divorce." While he drafted the documents for me, my body could not stop trembling. It was not heartache, but anger. In 7 years of marriage, he had deceived me so thoroughly, making me a fool for so long. He was willing to give all his assets to Celia. Over these years, the only gift he gave me was a second-hand wristwatch worth no more than 50 yuan. Even when I accidentally fell during pregnancy and nearly lost the child, he was accompanying Celia at Disneyland for her birthday. The most ridiculous thing was that he made me personally design their wedding dress. 2 months ago, Adrian brought size charts and forced me, who had barely preserved the pregnancy and was extremely weak, to get up and draw. He said nonchalantly, "A friend is having a wedding, design the wedding attire to the highest standards." The groom's size chart matched his exactly. And on the bride's wedding dress, the CL embroidered on the hem was precisely the abbreviation of Celia's name. Attorney Victor handed me the divorce agreement and advised, "Mrs. Evelyn, at least do not hand over the portion you earned yourself." I smiled bitterly. Over these years, Adrian had never given me a single penny. All household expenses came from the fees I earned from my drawings. Perhaps to him I was cheap and useful. Without spending a dime, he could make me willingly devote everything to support the family. When I returned home to sign, my lower abdomen twisted in severe pain. Clutching my belly, the fetal movements were unusually intense. My fully formed baby seemed to console or protest. Tears fell unrestrained. "I'm sorry, Mommy can't protect you." The next day, with Attorney Victor's help, I rented a house. I did not care about the layout, price, or location. I only required immediate occupancy. After signing the contract, returning to the cold home was already evening. My 8-month pregnant belly made walking difficult. But I endured the pain and personally cooked several dishes in the kitchen. Only after plating everything did I realize they were all Adrian's favorites. Over these years, I had memorized all his likes and dislikes in my heart, even forming instincts. I had even forgotten my own preferences. I sat in the chair, hoping only that this marriage could end amicably. But I reheated the dishes 8 times fully. It was not until 3 a.m. that Adrian opened the door. The oncoming jasmine fragrance rushed into my nostrils. This was Celia's favorite perfume. The hickeys on his neck were clear, covering faded marks. He was somewhat drunk. But when he saw the exquisitely plated, still steaming food on the table, he frowned in annoyance and sarcastically asked, "What, do you think this will make me feel sorry for you?" He brushed past me and went straight upstairs, not even glancing at me. As he passed, I suddenly noticed that the wedding ring I had personally designed was removed at some point. There was not even a mark on his ring finger. "Adrian." My voice was somewhat hoarse, my tone calm. "I placed the divorce agreement in the study. If there's no issue, please sign it." His steps paused slightly, he turned back to glare at me, full of sarcasm. "Evelyn, you're divorcing me just because of a will? I'm not dead yet." He sneered aloud, disregarding my pregnant body, subconsciously lighting a cigarette. "Don't forget how you married into this family initially. Celia is in poor health. The will is just a form I used to wish her well." He clearly remembered Celia's poor health but failed to see my belly so large that I could not see my feet. Love and lack thereof were distinctly clear. But he forgot. 10 years ago, he was kidnapped by his power-seizing stepbrother. Ignoring my family's opposition, I used every means to locate him. At the critical moment, it was I who blocked a knife for him. In the hospital room, he held me and swore, "I will definitely inherit the G family and give you a good life. If I betray you, may lightning strike me." He did inherit the G family. But the good life was given to someone else. For me, there was only a simplified wedding, a rented wedding dress, and a cold prenuptial agreement. I smiled, but my eyes ached sorely. "So, do you still remember that you owe me your life from back then?" Adrian's face was terrifyingly cold. After a long pause, he sneered very lightly, "It's been so long, and you still remember that? Do you think I owe you? How much? Is 1 million enough?" I did not know whether to cry or laugh. My life was worth 1 million in his heart. The expectations in my heart vanished completely. I tried hard to control my emotions and said softly, "No need, Adrian, I just want us to part amicably." As the words fell, I turned to leave. Behind me came his roar of extreme anger, "Fine, you've got guts. Don't come crying back to me later." Cry? In these 7 years of relationship, I had cried enough for him long ago. Before I fell asleep, I heard Adrian slamming the door as he left. The divorce agreement was torn up and thrown into the trash bin. I was puzzled. If he did not love me, why not let go? The phone suddenly vibrated. Celia sent a photo of Adrian holding her. "Sister, why is brother so clingy? Did you argue with him?" Scrolling up further, it was all photos she sent of her affectionate moments with Adrian. Adrian blow-drying her hair, cooking for her. Even willingly putting childish exclusive stickers on the passenger seat. She seemed to treat me as a diary, dumping all the little happinesses with my husband onto me. The phone popped up a new message. It was Adrian holding her while sleeping. The pajamas he wore were the ones I bought for him. She said helplessly, "Sister, that will is just something brother used to coax me, it has no legal effect. Don't argue with brother because of this." "But sister, did you know? Brother started sponsoring me when I was in junior high, before he knew you. The first time he saw you, he said my dimples resemble sisters. Hopefully, the baby will inherit the same dimples, brother will be happy." The last sentence made my stomach churn continuously, nauseating me to uncontrollable dry heaves. I hugged the toilet, vomiting until tears streamed down. Supporting myself on the sink, I looked at the faint dimples in the mirror. My heart, long numb to pain, felt as if pierced by a knife. So, he chose me initially merely to protect the underage Celia. And I happened to appear, becoming the perfect substitute. My vision blurred, I wiped haphazardly and replied, "You like picking up trash, that's fine, you only deserve to wear my discarded worn-out shoes." The next second, Adrian's call came in. Once, Celia posted an ambiguous Facebook with him. I liked it, and he acted just like today, calling to scold me. Back then, I aggrievedly explained that I had not bullied her. Now, I unhesitatingly blocked his number, along with all contact methods. After calming my emotions, I called to schedule a moving company. My luggage was minimal, only clothes and manuscripts. All other items related to him, including the wedding ring, I took none. Before leaving, I took one last look at this luxurious villa. Before moving in, I thought it would carry my happiness. After moving in, I realized it was merely a birdcage set for me. Now, I am free. After packing and cleaning, the sky was already dark. I planted a few potted plants on the balcony. The small apartment felt exceptionally cozy to me. Just as I was about to rest, I received a call from Adrian's assistant. As soon as I answered, Adrian's icy voice came through the receiver. "Evelyn, what exactly are you fussing about? I've told you many times, Celia is in poor health. Doing this will stimulate her. Come home now, I can overlook the past, and you properly give birth to my bloodline." My fingers gripping the phone tightened. Unexpectedly, after I left home, his first concern was still Celia. As for my safety, health, or emotions, he never considered them. "Evelyn, speak, did you hear? Come back now." I hung up the phone and blocked him in one go. As he wished, I would no longer stimulate Celia nor disturb them. Before the surgery, I underwent examinations as required by the doctor. The doctor showed me the ultrasound, the baby's limbs were already formed. "The baby is very healthy, do you really want to give up? Moreover, with the advanced stage, induction would greatly affect your body, and even the baby would feel pain." I stroked the tiny figure on the ultrasound. My heart felt gripped by an invisible hand. This was my blood-related baby, a vibrant life. I closed my eyes, pain exploded in the darkness. "Sorry, I'll think about it again." She nodded and gave some precautions. When I left the consultation room, my body was chilled. As soon as I looked up, I met Adrian's icy gaze. He was dressed in neatly groomed expensive suit, noble and aloof, in full control. He walked toward me, firmly grasping my wrist. "After so many days, have you fussed enough?" Seeing I said nothing, he irritably rubbed his temples. His tone was cold, that will wasn't stamped by me, it was invalid to begin with. "Celia has congenital heart disease, I just wanted to give her a meaningful gift to wish her good health." Such a pale and weak excuse, laughable to the point my vision blurred. I hoarsely questioned, "To wish her good health, couldn't you send a peace amulet?" "What about me? What do I have?" He was choked. I fiercely shook off his hand. Years of accumulated grievances and anger erupted. "Right after marriage, when I was hospitalized for gastric bleeding, you didn't answer my calls, saying you had to work overtime. But later, Celia sent me photos of you accompanying her to Fashion Week in Paris. On our wedding anniversary, you said you had a business trip, but I saw on her Weibo that you queued for 3 hours to buy her milk tea. Every time for prenatal checkups, you said you were busy, yet you had time to accompany her to exhibitions, buy bags, and celebrate birthdays. Even when I nearly miscarried and bled heavily, almost dying, you accompanied her to Disneyland to watch fireworks. Am I some cheap person?" These incidents, one by one, had once shattered me like sharp blades. But the moment I spoke them out, I realized the wounds had scabbed over, covering countless pus beneath. Adrian's face changed drastically, his eyes finally tinged with panic. You knew all along? How ridiculous." Even now, he thought he had hidden it perfectly. I forced a smile, but tears pattered down. "Adrian, I just didn't say it, but I'm not stupid." I pretended not to know, always thinking the Adrian who loved me would return to my side. My fingers pinched my palm painfully, almost drawing blood. The smile on my lips deepened. I haphazardly wiped the tears from my eyes. until seeing that will, I could deceive myself, but now, I can't lie anymore. A trace of guilt flashed in his eyes, the look I had fantasized about countless times. But it was too late. I said word by word, I will keep this child. But it has nothing to do with you or the G family. With that, I left on my own. He reached out to retain me but never dared to touch me. After deciding to give birth to the child, I carefully nurtured the pregnancy in the apartment. A week later, Attorney Victor told me Adrian refused the divorce. Mrs. Evelyn, if you insist on divorce, you can only proceed through litigation. Adrian indicated that if you go to court, he will spare no expense to seize custody. Attorney Victor's face was full of difficulty. I gently stroked my abdomen, silent for a long while. Because I knew Adrian could truly do it. But I, besides the child and the title of Mrs. Evelyn, had nothing. Attorney Victor told me that if the other party wanted to delay, the lawsuit could drag on for years. I took a deep breath. I will absolutely not let my baby be born under such circumstances. I will make him agree to the divorce. Just after bidding farewell to Attorney Victor, I saw Celia in the elevator. She was wearing new items from G brand, her whole outfit highly valuable. Holding a lunchbox, she smiled gently. "Sister, I've been looking for you for a long time." Dimples appeared at her lips. She wanted to enter my apartment but was blocked by me. "What's the matter?" Her steps paused slightly. She looked at me disapprovingly. "Brother is very worried about you. He specially asked me to bring you chicken soup stewed by Auntie." Her peering inside made me want to laugh. While closing the door, I perfunctorily said, "I don't need it, you can leave." She quickly blocked it, looking aggrieved. "I know you're angry, but brother and I really have nothing. Whether you have something or not is irrelevant to me." I sneered a few times. "Anyway, I'm divorcing him, wish you happiness." A flash of joy passed in Celia's eyes, then she quickly assumed a considerate pose for me. "Sister, don't be impulsive, the child can't be without a father. Moreover, brother also hopes for a child, you know, my health isn't great." My door-closing motion suddenly halted. An absurd notion surged from my chest. I could barely hear my own voice. "So? I give birth to the child, and he wants to give it to you to raise?" Celia aggrievedly reddened her eyes. "Sister, I just feel sorry for the child. After all, if I had good health to bear children, it wouldn't be like this." Subconsciously retreating half a step, "Sister, how could you think that? I just feel sorry for the child. If my health were good and I could bear my own, Adrian brother wouldn't." Coldness spread from my spine to all limbs. So that's how it was. He refused to divorce me and wanted to keep this child not because he couldn't bear to part with me, nor worried about my health issues. It was only because the person he truly loved could not bear children. And I happened to resemble her, able to give birth to a child with dimples like hers. Nausea churned continuously in my stomach. The taut string in my mind suddenly snapped. I could no longer hold back, fiercely slapping her face. I splashed the scalding chicken soup on her. Her skin instantly reddened from the burn, and she screamed as she ran away. I was so angry my chest heaved violently, shouting angrily, "Tell Adrian, unless I die. Otherwise, don't dream of making my child call someone else mother." Seeing her designer skirt dirted, Celia could no longer maintain the innocence and gentleness on her face. Now full of ferocity, gnashing her teeth, "Evelyn, don't push your luck. Do you think you alone can resist the entire G family?" I fearlessly met her gaze. "Then let's try and see if I can resist." Perhaps my appearance was too frightening. Celia said nothing more but stomped her foot hard and left. As the door closed, I slid down along the door panel to sit on the ground. My body was frighteningly cold, tears had unknowingly covered my face. Fear engulfed me like waves. I knew better than anyone that Adrian would obtain what he wanted by any means. If he truly wanted my child, I was powerless to resist. But I absolutely could not let him get the baby. This child was my only remaining support, the sole treasure in my failed relationship. No one could take him away. Not Celia. Not Adrian. A stabbing pain came from my lower abdomen. The tiny life in my belly seemed to comfort me, moving slightly. I choked, "Baby, don't be afraid, I will definitely protect you." As night fell, looking at my pale face in the mirror, I suddenly thought, if this baby no longer existed, would Adrian let me go? Before I could think clearly, the phone suddenly vibrated. An anonymous account sent me several files. Clicking in, they were surprisingly chat records between Adrian and Celia from several years ago. The time was far before I knew him. The second was Celia's medical record. She was actually completely infertile. As if possessed, I clicked in. The third was a recording. The cold, rational voice was familiar to the point of being etched into my bones. Adrian said, "The official seal on the will must be handled properly. This is my guarantee to Celia. She has always lacked security. I want her to know everything of mine is hers. As for Evelyn, she just blocked a knife for me. Being Mrs. Evelyn for 7 years is enough repayment. Moreover, she has the chance to bear my child. Celia likes children. If this child resembles her in 3 parts, that would be best. Once the child is born, if Evelyn doesn't make trouble, I can give her some money to live well, but if she insists on fussing, don't blame me for being ruthless." The recording abruptly stopped here. I felt as if struck by a heavy hammer, my mind blank. Tears fell uncontrollably, blood rushing backward through my body. So, the truth was as I guessed. His deliberate approach to me was true. Marrying me was forced. My blocking the knife for him was a burden and trouble, even repayable just by being Mrs. Evelyn. My heart felt brutally hammered. I rushed into the bathroom to vomit again. This time, not due to morning sickness, but disgust. Disgusted by this marriage that began with calculations. Disgusted by my misplaced sincerity. Vomiting until only bile and tears remained. Supporting myself on the wall, my waist ached so much I could not stand straight. Trembling, I took out my phone and removed Adrian's number from the blacklist. I dialed, smiling calmly. "Adrian, you really want this child, don't you?" There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, his cold, furious voice rang out, "What are you fussing about now?" Fussing? I laughed louder and louder. Until I could laugh no more, I enunciated word by word, slowly saying, "This child, you will never have the chance to get." With that, without waiting for his response, I hung up directly. I removed the SIM card and went out. I hailed a cab to a private clinic in a remote alley. This clinic advertised postpartum care. But in reality, it provided many special services, such as giving me a new identity to start over. Back then, to find Adrian's kidnapping location. I searched all connections in Haicheng to learn about this clinic. Because of him, I knew about it. And because of him, I would disappear here forever. In the following week, I vanished completely as if evaporated from the world. Despite Adrian using every means to find news of me, he would never imagine I used such a ruthless method to disappear. News of a fire at a private clinic topped media hot searches. The news said the victim was a pregnant woman. The body was severely carbonized, identity still under verification. Only at the scene was a handcrafted custom ring, with JLZ engraved on the band. This ring was the one I personally designed for marrying Adrian. Meanwhile, I had disguised myself, holding a new ID, and boarded the plane. Looking at the blue sky and white clouds outside the porthole, I gently stroked my abdomen and smiled, "Baby, don't be afraid. Mommy is taking you away from here to live a new life. Mommy will give you the best future." Upon arriving in the new city, I immediately went to the hospital for prenatal care. People in southern small cities are always warm. The doctor during routine checkup, watching the news, shook his head and said to me, "This deceased pregnant woman is pitiful too. The wealthy wife finally had a family of 3 for a good life. Suddenly passing away, her husband couldn't bear the blow and vomited blood, fainting on the spot." I looked up at the TV. The person in coma was precisely Adrian. I heard that upon learning of my death, he madly refused to believe it was my body. No matter the cost, find her for me. He truly dug 3 feet into the ground. Even sending people to search the sea. I knew he was not worried about me, only the child in my belly. I also heard he argued with Celia. The two fought in a mall, reason unknown. But this scandal caused G Company's stock price to plummet. And his stepbrother, who once vied for power, seized the opportunity to pounce. The board was already evaluating Adrian's capabilities. But all this was no longer relevant to me. I stroked my abdomen, happily and calmly awaiting the baby's birth. On the delivery day, it was a week earlier than the due date. Fortunately, I was staying in the hospital. The doctors quickly pushed me into the delivery room. But the intense pain still blurred my vision. In a daze, I seemed to return to 10 years ago. The youth carefully wiped the blood from my body, choking, "Wait for me, Evelyn, I will definitely give you a future." I waited, for a full 10 years. But Adrian, how could you go back on your word? You said if you betrayed me, lightning would strike you. But now? Push, push. The doctor shouted, tears and sweat falling together. In a haze, I heard the baby's first cry. Wah, it's a boy. Very healthy. The nurse held the wrinkled baby, smiling as she handed him to me. Weakly turning my head, I saw this little monkey who couldn't yet open his eyes, already squeezing out a smile at me. He had dimples, just like mine, not like Celia at all. I took him, using all my strength, carefully holding him in my arms. He immediately nuzzled in my arms. The warm touch warmed all my pain and gloom. I could no longer hold back, holding him and wailing loudly. Suddenly, I felt that the 10 years of misplaced devotion were cancelled out at this moment. I had obtained the most precious treasure in the world. I named him Ian, wishing him a life not confined to a small space, but brilliant and free. After discharge, I continued my work as a fashion designer. The salary was not high, but it was free. I bought a small courtyard with Ian and planted the yard full of flowers. Ian was very well behaved, not crying or fussing. The dimples at his lips grew deeper, and even his brows and eyes resembled mine. I could hardly see Adrian's shadow in him. When he learned to speak, his first word was "Mommy." When toddling, he ran toward my embrace. When learning chopsticks, the first piece he picked was placed in my bowl. Just looking at him, I could forget and forgive all past sufferings. He would not bear my hatred for Adrian, only receive my full love. I thought days would continue peacefully like this. Until Ian's second birthday. I took him to a restaurant to celebrate. Just leaving the courtyard, I faced a familiar back. This figure was almost etched into my soul. With one glance, I recognized it as Adrian. How did he find here? Fear and shock swept my body, my breath hitched. Until Ian whimpered uncomfortably, I realized belatedly that I had unconsciously tightened my hold on him too much. Sorry, Ian. I held and coaxed him. I tried to be quiet, but the noise still made Adrian turn sharply. The moment our eyes met, his fingers clenched, body stiff. I saw countless emotions on his face: bewilderment, shock, then incredulous ecstasy and intense pain. His gaze gradually lowered to the child in my arms. His pupils suddenly constricted, his throat seemed gripped by a large hand, unable to make a sound. After a long while, he hoarsely said, "Evelyn, you're still alive." He walked toward me, not as swiftly as before. Instead, his steps were heavy, as if stepping on his heart. I subconsciously retreated a step, gritting my teeth. "Don't come over." A trace of hurt flashed on his face. He actually stopped a few steps away, no longer approaching. But his gaze remained glued to the child's face. Even his voice trembled, throat rolling, asking me, "This is our child, right?" I took a deep breath, forcing back the surging emotions. I said calmly, "Adrian, you've mistaken." I had long changed my appearance, deliberately lowering my voice, as if a different person. But he shook his head in collapse. "I couldn't mistake, Evelyn, I know it's you." His face was pale, eyes bloodshot. Excited to the point of wanting to pull me forward, I hurriedly retreated, taking out my phone. "If you come closer, I'll call the police." He immediately froze in place, painfully saying, "Sorry, Evelyn, really sorry." I've searched for you for so long, everywhere. But that fire, and that ring, I really thought you had already. I interrupted him, my tone cold and indifferent. Let past things pass. I hope you won't disturb me and the child's life anymore. His lips moved, as if his head was smashed by a heavy hammer. But he is also my child. You can't be so selfish. I sneered, the long-suppressed emotion surging again. This is my child, unrelated to you, the G family, or Celia. Have you forgotten? You wanted me to give birth only because the woman you deeply love can't bear children. You just wanted a child with similar dimples to fulfill your wish to be parents. I shouted sternly word by word, but look clearly, my child's dimples resemble mine, brows and eyes too. He doesn't resemble Celia at all. Nor is he a tool for your love. He is my treasure, my life. The cold words turned into blades, piercing Adrian's chest. He staggered, almost unable to stand. His face drained of color, his gaze toward me full of pain. His throat surged, stumbling to explain, Evelyn, it's not like that, I was wrong. I only realized later that I really. I smiled, interrupting his pale and weak words. Exhaustion swept my body. It doesn't matter anymore, Adrian. Evelyn died in the fire 2 years ago. Consider me begging you, let me and the child go. With that, I held Ian and quickly left. Behind me, he shouted in painful collapse. But I did not turn back. Only when I had shaken him off far away did I squat down, gasping heavily. Droplets slid down my cheeks. I couldn't tell if they were tears or sweat. Suddenly, I felt a warm touch on my cheek. Ian seemed to sense my emotions. He carefully brushed away my tears. Mommy, smile. He couldn't speak clearly yet but used all his strength to comfort me. Holding him, tears rolled uncontrollably. But I forced my lips to curve up, saying, Mommy is smiling. I hugged tightly, like a drowning person clutching a life-saving driftwood. In my heart, I prayed, Adrian, if you truly have any conscience left, don't disturb me and Ian anymore. After that day, Adrian did not leave. Instead, he lingered daily near my and Ian's home, and the small shops we frequented. But he dared not approach, only glancing from afar. Every time I saw his figure, I immediately took Ian home. After a full month, he seemed to finally understand I was serious. One morning, when I went out to get vegetables, I saw a file bag at the door. Opening it, inside were the signed divorce agreement and asset transfer documents. He transferred most of his assets, properties, and shares to my name, even supplementing a dowry for me. How ironic, what I begged for bitterly back then was now effortlessly delivered to me. Flipping further, there was also a notarized document relinquishing child custody. And a letter. His handwriting was light, with a few teardrops on the paper. Sorry, Evelyn. The moment I learned of your death, I suddenly realized my feelings for you were not just so-called repayment and utilization. I truly fell in love with you unknowingly long ago. The time after you left was truly painful for me, and I understood how deep the hurt I caused you was. Seeing you and the child well, I truly felt heartfelt happiness. Sorry for not giving you a dowry back then, now I'm making it up. I don't know how to love, nor how to love someone. You taught me, now I can responsibly tell you, I love you. All agreements are notarized, these are what you deserve, hoping you won't have to toil for a livelihood anymore. I won't disturb you again. Sorry. Adrian. And in the letter paper, there was a photo. It was a candid shot by a friend at the wedding of me and him. He looked at me with lingering gaze, while I held a wine glass, chatting and laughing brightly with others. A natural capture, yet unfamiliar like from the last century. Flipping it over, I discovered a line on the back of the photo paper, perhaps our love has a time difference. I threw the letter and photo into the trash bin. But I took all the documents. Not because I forgave him, but because this money was rightfully mine. It was what I should take. I wanted to give Ian a better life, better education. These assets could let him make countless mistakes, and I could still back him up. As for Adrian, I touched my chest. that heart which had pained a million times for him finally no longer hurt. Adrian returned to Haicheng, calming the company's turmoil again. He changed a lot, becoming more serious and silent, his figure no longer seen in entertainment venues. I originally thought he would marry Celia. But he seemed not to be with her. She appeared to have gone abroad, with no more news. Later, Adrian's health had issues. He handed the company to professional managers and retired himself. When I saw this news, my heart stirred no ripple, as if looking at a stranger. The once engraved past would eventually fade into calm with time. A few years later, Ian started elementary school. He was smart, sensible, lively, and cheerful. Even lacking fatherly love did not make him resentful. Instead, he would hug me and say, "Mommy, raising me alone must be really hard." I was grateful to have such an obedient child. He was the treasure in the river of my life. I took him from the southern small city to a big city, moving into a better house. Using the money Adrian left, I opened a studio. I had the confidence to let Ian choose what he wanted to learn and live the life he desired. Just that, I never saw Adrian again, nor Celia. Not even hearing their news, as if they had never appeared in my life. Until Ian's 10th year, I suddenly received a call from Attorney Victor. His voice was as professionally gentle as ever, yet with a subtle regret. "Mrs. Evelyn, no, Ms. Evelyn. Mr. Adrian passed away this morning. According to Mr. Adrian's will, all his remaining assets will be transferred to you and Mr. Ian. When are you available to sign?" My fingers gripping the phone had whitened knuckles. The catalyst for ending our relationship was a will. But I didn't expect him to change the will's beneficiary before death. A sting I hadn't felt in a long time crossed my heart. Warm sunlight spread from the window. After a while, I heard myself say, "Donate all these assets. Attorney Victor, please handle it fully." Attorney Victor was silent for a moment, ultimately respecting my wish, and hung up. Once I hated having nothing. But now, I had truly let go. The door opened. Ian smiled and said, "Mommy, I got first place again. In the essay, I wrote about Mommy. The teacher said my mommy is really amazing." "Humph, my mommy is the most amazing in the world." He gave me a hug, full of dependence and love. I firmly caught him, catching the grandest treasure of my life.